Hey everyone, welcome to the October 2022 update on the performance of my solar array. So first of all, the disclaimer, I'm not an expert, I'm sharing my opinions. If you are considering getting any of this equipment, please make sure you seek qualified advice first. Right, let's get straight into the numbers. So for the month of October, the sunshine here in the UK and London has really tailed off. We only produced 346.6 kilowatts. We exported 14.4. We imported 451.5, meaning that our house consumed 783.6 kilowatts in total. So that is a 42% energy independent score. So it's a dramatic drop in the last couple of months from being up in the 90s. I am kind of driving this number down a little bit because we're charging the car overnight using the Octopus Go tariff because we don't have enough surplus solar. So the amount of kilowatts that go into the car is really skewing these metrics and forcing it down. Looking over on the right hand side, you can see that the front array on our house, which faces almost east, is doing the bulk of the work, and on the rear of our house, which is kind of west-northwest, it's still contributing overall, but those couple of panels that I've got which are affected by shading are really kind of only able to produce about half what the other panel on the same roof is able to do. Alright, moving on to talk about the best and the worst days. So the best day we had was the 8th of October. We only produced a 32% energy independence, but that is because we were charging the car and charging the battery overnight. So we pulled an awful lot of kilowatts, which we paid for. But in terms of sunshine, we managed to produce 19.6 kilowatts, and we have quite a nice clean curve here if you exclude the overnight charging that we did. The worst day was the 20th of October. So we only produced 3.5 kilowatts. We did charge the battery a little bit overnight, and then we were pulling from the grid on the overnight tariff until 4:30 when the battery took over again. And then we had this small trickle of solar power coming in during the day, which wasn't enough. So the 3.5 that it produced during the day was nowhere near enough to meet our demand. So the battery was draining out, and basically by the time we got to around here, which is about 7 p.m, 7:30, the battery was completely empty, and we ended up pulling from the grid. Now I should say that in the battery I had a setting which tells it how much to charge overnight, and I hadn't set this to 100%. So I think it was on around 55-60%, which is not enough capacity to get us through a day with demand that we have in a day. So that was a bit of an error created by me, but it's a bit hard at the moment to find the balance between when to set the battery to 100 or when to leave a bit of spare capacity in there to accommodate the solar power that we generate during the day. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, and I have to keep tinkering with it. But anyway, in terms of solar production, the 20th of October was the worst day that we had. Moving on to look at the performance of the array month on month. So the chart down here on the bottom right is the new one. It's the same as the one you saw on the previous slide, but you can look at the colours and kind of see where the contributions are and how it's being affected month on month. Let's talk about our household electricity consumption. So looking over here on the right hand side now, the house used 450 kilowatts that we ended up pulling from the grid. It used 148 kilowatts, which we got from solar power, and 175 kilowatts was put into the car. The eddy was switched off for the entire month of October, like at the main, so there's absolutely nothing going in there. I have turned it back on for the month of November, so in the next update you'll hear about that. Now, these metrics don't quite make sense, and I realise this, but if I tinker with it, I will break all of history, so I decided to leave it the same. Some of the power going into the car we did pull from the grid. None of it was kind of green energy coming from the solar power. Okay, all of this 175 kilowatts was from the overnight tariff on the grid. But the way that I've designed the chart meant that some of these kilowatts that you see here, 450, actually should be lumped together with this green section here. But something funny is going on. I did try and fix it, but it doesn't work properly. But the point is, our house used up 774 kilowatts worth of energy, and 175 of that was towards the car. So from the remainder, that's how much our house is normally consuming. So if you compare that to the previous October, where we used 631, if I've done my math correctly, we used exactly 600 this October, excluding the car. So like for like, we've managed to reduce our consumption a little bit. If I compare to the previous October, we used 609. So we're close to the previous October in terms of our like for like demand. Moving on to talk about gas. So October has been particularly cold, and so our gas consumption has increased dramatically. As I've said before, we have 2 supplies into our house, and surprisingly, the smaller portion of our house actually used more gas. That's because it's the north-facing side, so it gets slightly less kind of free heat from the sunshine during the day. So the boiler is having to do more work. Comparing that to previous months, like compared to last October, we've used, approaching double the amount of gas, and compared to the year before, we've used slightly less. So I can't remember what happened last October. Perhaps it was a warmer month and we used significantly less gas. If I talk about this October, all I know is it's been freezing cold the whole time, miserable and rainy, and we didn't start the heating at the beginning of October. We managed to survive until at least mid-October before it came on. So I think it's been a particularly bad month. There's been nothing else going on in the house which would make me think that we've driven up the consumption for any other reason. Looking at the metrics at the top, so 806 kilowatts has gone into the eddy. That hasn't changed since the prior month, and the efficiency this month is 0% because we put nothing into the eddy. Okay, if I talk about referrals for a moment, so if you're interested in switching to Octopus Go, it's a very good time to have a think about it and try and secure a good rate before the winter really kicks in and you end up kind of paying a premium because you might be on a variable tariff at the moment, or your tariff is due to expire and you're going to end up onto a more expensive default rate. So if you're interested in switching, feel free to use the link I have put on the screen, or give Octopus a call and quote the reference number that you see there. Either way, you and I will both receive a £50 credit on our next bill as a thank you from Octopus. Okay, let's talk about the installer's estimates versus reality. So, starting on the left-hand side, although we generated significantly less, almost by half compared to some of the summer months, we managed to consume 96% of all of the electricity the solar panels produced. So that 2% that we've dropped off compared to the prior months is disappointing, but I will explain why shortly. But either way, it's still good that these numbers are really up there. What it means, if I look over on the right-hand side, is that we are completely blowing away the installer's estimates. So first of all, the installer said in a 12-month period we would produce 4,916 kilowatts. Well, we've actually produced 5,953. So that's 121% of what the installer thought. Second of all, the installer thought we would only consume half of what we produce, which is 2,458, but we have actually managed to consume 5,612, which is 228% of their estimate. So the significance of this is if we're producing more solar power than they think, that means that we're able to consume more of it, which means we're purchasing less from the grid, which is saving us money. So that's one bonus. It means the overall payback period will be reduced. Second, the green curve here, this is how much we're consuming versus their estimate. So being up at 228%, being able to consume more than double what they thought, also means that their forecasts on our payback are miles off the mark, and we are going to reduce it by more than half in this case. Okay, so this is really, really important. And if you're considering getting solar and you're getting quotes from your installers, they are highly likely to tell you that the payback period is something like 18 years. That seems to be the average all the time. Well, the reality is it's a lot less. One, because they're told to be conservative in the numbers that they give you. So as I've demonstrated, my systems managed to produce 21% more than they thought. But second of all, at least in my case, the installer made no inclusion for the fact that I've got a battery. And the fact that I can store the solar power during the day and use it up when there's no sunshine means that the payback period of this whole thing dramatically increases. So I don't know if they're modernizing their ways today and including batteries in their estimates, but at least in my case they didn't. So this is why it's significant, and this is why you should pay attention to it if you're getting quotes, because if they're not including the battery, then it's highly likely that the real life setup or scenario that you're going to experience is similar to me, and basically that means that their estimate is double what it probably will work out to be in reality. Okay, let's talk about peak power then. So we averaged 2.4 kilowatts for the month of October. The peak power was about 3 or just over 3. I think we got to 3.4 over there. And the average temperature, we had a peak of about 23 degrees towards the end of October on one of the days. As I keep saying every month, I personally don't see the correlation between the temperature and the peak power that we've achieved, but this is what it looks like. And to talk about our energy independence, so you can see again in October we had a dramatic drop compared to the previous months where our average was 46-47%. We had a few decent days in here, but we didn't make it over 80% on any day, and we certainly had some bad days on here. But remember what I said before, the bad days are now amplified when we charge the car from the grid, because that really, the point of being energy independent is that we don't pull power from the grid. And for the month of September, October and onwards, I am not charging the car using any sunshine because we simply don't have enough sunshine. Any solar power we generate goes to meet our daily demand, and it goes into the battery to keep us going through the night. So if I need to charge the car, I schedule it to charge overnight on the Octopus Go tariff. So I am pulling from the grid, although I'm pulling from the grid at a quarter of the peak time price. So I'm still saving money. But the way these metric works, it means that our energy independence is lower. Overall lifetime energy independence is showing up at 75% on here, which is pretty good. And then if I move on and we talk about the payback curve. So first of all, let's go through the numbers at the very top of the page. CapEx has stayed the same. We haven't spent any more money on our system, so we're still at 21,600. Our solar savings have increased a little bit more. We've banked about another £100 and we're on £1,593 saved purely from having solar power. We've saved £1,126 on diesel, which we would have had to pay if we carried on having the diesel car. We've saved £57 by diverting electricity into the eddy to save us buying gas. We've saved we've made a grand total of £4.74 by selling our surplus energy back to the grid. So as I've said over and over again in multiple videos, it is completely pointless if you're thinking of getting a solar powered system with the view to sell your surplus back to the grid and make money. Because of all the power that I've sent back to the grid, all they've given me is £4.74. You are much better off using up your surplus solar. Find a way to use it. Switch more things to use electricity. Get a battery, get an electric car, get an eddy or a solar iBoost. Call your friends round to charge their gadgets, whatever it might be. That is much better than selling it back to the grid. Now, the reason I have this is because there's always a trickle of power which goes back to the grid. There's a few days where we do get a lot of sunshine and I'm not paying attention and I've got the eddy switched off and I've not got the car plugged in to charge, and we end up with a surplus and it does go back to the grid. So for the little trickle that I do end up sending back, I'm making whatever they're going to give me. But I'm certainly not banking on it making any kind of material difference. Okay, so I can only underline the point. Getting the SEG tariff is worth doing if you have an entire solar setup, but that shouldn't be your primary reason for getting any of this equipment. Okay, if I talk about the savings from Octopus, so what I mean by this is by drawing electricity at night while we're on the Octopus Go tariff, which, like I said before, is about a quarter of the price of their peak time rate. And so by scheduling things to pull power, like charge the car overnight, charge up the battery overnight, I'm effectively buying electricity at a quarter of the price I would otherwise need to pay. And so because of that, I'm banking the saving. And across the 2 months I've been doing this so far, we have saved £150 so far. In the month of October alone, we banked about £90. The cost to charge the EV is exactly £110 in total. So we have had a bit of public network charging happening during the course of this month. But that takes our total OPEX savings to £2,672. So subtract that from the 21,000 and you're left with a balance of 18,943 to pay back. That means we have paid back 12.4% of our system, or that's our return on investment so far. How long have I had solar? Well, we're on 11 months and something. We're just short of 12 months. And surprisingly, this month we still managed to reduce the forecasted payback period by only a couple of months, but we've managed to put it down and we're on 8 years and 4 months. Okay, last month we were on 8 years and 6 months. So this is still really, really good news that the savings in the month of October is still reducing our average overall. All right, let's look at the table then on the chart. First of all, let's look at the chart in the background. So the key lines here are this kind of yellowy gold line up here at the top. That's our CapEx. And this green line over here is the sum of all the other lines. And that is our OPEX savings. When the green line catches up with the yellow line, that's when we break even and we've paid back the £21,000 that we invested. And based on all these metrics, we expect the green line to catch up with that gold line or yellow line in 8 years and 4 months' time, approximately. Okay, my installer thought that it would take me 18 years to pay back the system. So as I keep saying, in my case, I am averaging after 12 months a bit better than half. I've managed to improve their estimate by a bit more than half. Okay, let's read through the numbers then. For the month of October, our solar panels produced 346 kilowatts. We exported 23 kilowatts to the grid, and therefore we consumed 323 kilowatts into the house. The Enphase system says I imported 451 kilowatts. Octopus says I imported 450. So that's pretty accurate given it's being measured by a CT clamp. In terms of consumption then, the whole house consumed 783 kilowatts. Nothing went into the eddy. 175 kilowatts went into the car. But as I said, this was pulled all from the grid. And therefore these metrics are a bit off, right? The house didn't consume 148 like it says here. It would have included the 175 as well. So the house has consumed basically about 325 kilowatts worth of solar power. And this 175 came from the grid. In terms of gas, the figures are the same. 3,209 kilowatts is what we consumed in the house. And all of that came from the grid. We didn't have any eddy diverting it to offset the gas. CapEx has stayed the same at 21,616. All of our rates have stayed the same. The solar panels have saved us £100, £99.77, and that is basically the 346 kilowatts that they produced. The 323 kilowatts that the house consumed, multiplied by the cost of electricity at the peak time rate. That's how I get to £100. No savings this month from the eddy because I had it switched off. We saved £277 worth of diesel. So I've done quite a lot of driving at the beginning of the month. So I've had to charge the car, but by not buying diesel, I've saved £277. SEG contributed 97 pence this month for the 23 kilowatts that we sold back to them. I've highlighted the box for the previous month because I estimated what this was last month because I don't think I had the bill. Well, now I've got the bill, I've corrected the number, so that's why I put a red box around it just to remind me to draw attention to it. The Octopus Go savings were just short of £90. So again, this is because I'm charging the car or charging the battery at the off-peak rate, and I'm banking the rest of the money. I did charge the car for a portion of the time from the public network, and I had to pay for it. So the cost to me was £33 to charge the car from the public network, as opposed to buying it on the cheap from our overnight tariff. So that means our total OPEX savings for the month of October are £344.80, and our cumulative savings are £2,672.35. That leaves us £18,943 to pay back. And as I said before, that means our payback, or our return on investment, is 12.36%, and we forecast on a linear basis to break even to 8 years and 4 months. The energy independence for the month of October averaged 42%. And as I said, that's been pulled down dramatically because I am charging the car and charging the battery now every night from the nighttime tariff. So it's really pulling that metric down. Okay, so that is basically it. I've done it real quick this month because there will be a further video coming where I'm going to explain the same figures again, but exactly 1 year later, which is the whole system was commissioned on the 9th of November 2021. So I have already pulled the metrics yesterday at the end of the day on the 8th to show you what we've produced exactly 1 year on. It's very similar to the numbers that I've presented in these slides, but I thought I'd be exact. So another video will come in a few days' time where I'll run through all of that. But overall, for the month of October, given that the sunshine has dropped off dramatically and that it's freezing cold and we've got all the heaters and everything running, I still think banking £344 to offset our investment is a decent contribution. And if I just eyeball the previous months, in May we banked 327, in June, which was the best month, we banked 388. So we're up in the same ballpark as some of our best months. And this is really because we've got 2 batteries now, so we're able to capture more sunshine and we're able to charge up the batteries from the grid to meet our demand on the cheap rate. And also because we're charging the car, which is making a huge difference in this entire calculation, because we're buying less diesel and we're buying electricity for very cheap. I had a few comments from people about the fact that I've not included the cost of the car in these calculations. I have covered this in a previous video, so maybe go back and review some of the earlier ones where I talk about it. But just to mention it again, the car's not included because I've always had a car, we're always going to need a car, and we change our car every kind of 3, 4, 5 years. So the car coincided roughly with the timing of when we got solar panels, but the car was happening anyway. The car was ordered before we even thought about getting solar panels. So that cost on the car is a recurring cost for us, and it would have happened anyway. Also, this time, instead of purchasing the car, we've leased the car. So we haven't actually spent any money in terms of capital to buy the thing in the first place. Yes, we are paying a monthly rental cost for the car, but as I say, paying for a car up front or paying for it monthly is a cost we would have incurred anyway, so I'm not including it in the calculation. Now, I know some of you might think differently, that's fair enough, but this is how it makes sense in my head. The other point is that if you argue the car has to be included in this cost, then of course you should argue that the cost of the house should be included, because I wouldn't be able to install solar panels if I didn't have a roof to put it on. So, like I keep saying, you have to draw the line somewhere, and so I've chosen not to include the cost of the car or the cost of the house in these calculations, as kind of they were there anyway. But I am managing to save money by using the roof, putting solar panels on it, and I am managing to save money by using the free electricity from the sunshine and using the battery that we've purchased as part of this system to buy electricity on the cheap and charge up the car that way. Alright, so I hope you found this video useful. Please do comment with the returns from your own solar array if you've got one. It's always interesting to compare and contrast. For what I've seen in the previous month, the people who have a south-facing array are really managing to eke out a lot more power than I am, because their panels are really pointing in the right direction all of the time. And the folks who've got an east-west array similar to mine Basically only half the panels are working at any one point and doing anything useful. So for the amount of capital that I've had to outlay, I'm not getting as much return from the panels as I would have liked. And that's why I've got some of the charts I've got. Okay, if you've got any comments or questions, please do feel free to leave them and I'll do my best to get back to you. Otherwise, keep your eyes peeled in the next few days for the next video, which will be the annual 1 year summary.